The NBA does not sleep. We've got a ton of news going on. You would think the NBA would take a break after the finals ending just a week and a half ago, but that would be wrong. We
Oh,
had
we
the
don't know this by now? Come on. I thought we're in season 9. It doesn't sleep. We're done past it. Back in the day, it used to for a little bit. It does not sleep anymore. I mean, the fact that we were doing the draft essentially, I mean, days after the Warriors won the
yeah.
title. So you already knew that was going to happen. But that's the thing. The NBA summertime, I mean, outside of maybe August, like this is a jam-packed podcast. And I know that's like the most cliche thing to say in the world, but we really have a lot to talk about between trades, between the draft recap, between John Wall going to the Clippers, multiple coaching hires. I don't want to give the whole episode away, but we got to start with some drama and warm-up jumpers, though I guess it wasn't as dramatic as it seemed to be with Kyrie Irving just, going back to Brooklyn on the qualifying offer.
Well, and that's the thing is, so he did opt into the final year and the 37 million with Brooklyn, but before that, we had a lot of conversations as to teams he was okay going to, potentially ending up somehow with the Lakers. We were exploring it at one point, and man, oh man, I will say though, if there was any um, if there was any leverage or weight to what was coming out and being said, I do feel like there was a surprise that the 76ers was on his list of teams he would want to go to.
Oh, just because of him and Harden. Like, you imagine
Yeah,
that. I mean, apparently, if you believe the reports, one of the big reasons Harden wanted out of Brooklyn was just because of the whole Kyrie
right.
situation with him not playing half the year with, special treatment, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise. But I mean, think about how crazy it is just that Kyrie Irving we know when he is healthy and on the basketball court, he is one of the best players in the NBA. Like, he is an elite scorer. He has maybe the best handle in the NBA. And Kyrie Irving is now so toxic that nobody wanted him. Like, that was the most
Yeah.
telling part to me, is that you could have had every franchise in the NBA and no one made real offers. The Lakers were the only one who make a push, which of course they did. Like, the Lakers, it makes a ton of sense for the Lakers if he's willing to go back and play with LeBron. Like, that's a huge upgrade. The Lakers had nothing to give him. The only reason I gave that any kind of credibility at all is because if there's anyone who's going to turn $30 extra million down to go do something else, it's Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie.
Like, Kyrie's already got a lot of money. He's already won the title, so it's not like he's even ring chasing at this point. So I would have seen that from a fit perspective. Realistically, he did, I think, the common sense thing to go back to Brooklyn, but I mean, it's certifiably weird now. I mean, you don't even know that Brooklyn wants him. Like, Brooklyn made it pretty clear that it seems like they wanted him out the door and that they were willing to potentially risk losing Kevin Durant over it. Now, obviously, that's avoided now, but I mean, Brooklyn is going to be in a chance to win next year. But the reality is with Kyrie Irving, it is crazy. Like, you just can't give him the benefit of the doubt anymore. Like, the way you got to look at it, the Cleveland exit was acrimonious, even after the title win. He blew up Boston more or less at that time. Obviously, they bounced back, but he blew up that team. He's now potentially blown up Brooklyn before they've gone too far. So this is just what you have. It's just remarkable that somebody this talented, he's just toxic now.
Well, and it's interesting. So I was having this thought the other day, and let me know if you think I'm off base with this, but Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both feel like guys that were maybe not considered the leader of their teams, left to be the leader of the team, and haven't been able to like see the promised land as them being the guys doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think for KD in particular, like, I mean, especially now when you look at the Dubs coming off another title
Right,
here,
right.
like KD left the Bay to go get one on his own, essentially, to be the guy, to create his situation, to
Yep.
constantly contend. And this is what's crazy. They're, again, a step away from potentially winning the title 2 years ago with that Milwaukee, with Durant's foot being on the line. Like, Kevin Durant played maybe the best game he's ever played in the
Mhm.
NBA, that game 7 in the L. Like, he was unbelievable. You have James Harden, you have Kyrie Irving. The depth is really solid. Like, I mean, I remember saying going into the season last year, like, I thought Brooklyn was the overwhelming title favorites. And instead, just because of how it's played out, you're in a situation where Brooklyn may be strapped. Now, the good thing with Kevin Durant is that he's under contract at least. So, look, I don't care if Kevin Durant's 34 years old. He's going to get a haul, unlike anything we've
Mhm.
seen before. And especially because he's under contract. Like, you're looking at one of the more ridiculous hauls if Kevin Durant actually decides to leave that you're going to be able to get in NBA history. At the end of the day, look, you just got to run it back next year now. Like, run it back with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. The depth is still there. You assume that that gets a little bit better. You've got Ben Simmons potentially being something. I mean, that's what's crazy about this too, is that Ben Simmons hasn't played basketball now in a year, and Kyrie Irving is so all over the place that no one's even talking about that from a Brooklyn perspective.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I did see a few memes joking about him having a hurt back, realizing that KD and Durant might not be on the team next year. But I don't know. Maybe he'll have a resurgence. I hear Kendall Jenner might be back on the market, so maybe he's all excited, and Devin Booker can be sad, and then he can have a good year.
Oh, I would say Phoenix. So they're gonna. I mean, not that I wouldn't call it a bounce back. Your book was awesome, but
Yeah.
a motivated book might help. I mean, Lord knows they shouldn't need any motivation after that playoff loss to Dallas. Good Lord, that's still one of the most mind-blowing things I've seen in recent years. Not them losing, it's the way they lost. Like, they were ran off the floor. It looked like you were playing 2K on rookie difficulty. Like, that should not happen with a team that wins 64 games. But
And they have some decent amount of changes probably coming their way with DeAndre Ayton, seeing what goes down there. So
yeah.
that's what we'll figure out or find out this offseason, obviously. So
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest looming questions left. I mean, Kyrie was fun for the dramatics, but at the end of the day, probably made the smart decision. I mean, he's only going back to Brooklyn for 1 year, so I mean, he could very well become a free agent and be gone. And if that's what he truly wants, he can dictate it a little bit more there. But look, you hope it works out. Obviously, the vaccine requirement is not going to be a thing this year in New York, so Kyrie will be able to play home games. But yeah, I mean, they're going to need him, and but it's just crazy again with the injury history, with the off the floor stuff. Like, it is. I don't think Kyrie's a bad guy, but I think you're definitely losing the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that sham statement too was ridiculous. Like, that was one of the funniest things you've ever read, right? Like, what on earth is Kyrie Irving talking about? Like, sometimes you got to be different and you got to lead the way. So I'm opting in at $36 million. It's like, that was the obvious solution, Kyrie. Like, what are you talking? There was nothing different or bold about that. What are you talking about?
yeah, it was kind of like, wait, well, of course that's what you're gonna do. That's not being different. That's what everyone would most likely do in that situation. I feel like
It's common sense. It's $30 million.
it's just a weird. It was a very odd way to put it, um, which you would only get from Kyrie. So I guess in that sense, we kind of expected that sort of thing from him, but it's still very surprising.
Yeah, it's never a dull moment. You hope if you're
Who
Brooklyn's sake that you can get through it without too much drama this year. But it seems like, I mean, look, I think Brooklyn kind of telegraphed that they don't really want him there. So I mean, it's gonna be a little weird.
Yeah, well, it got me wondering though, and I wanted to ask you this: who team wise do you think has the most to change this offseason, or most questions going into this offseason from a team that'll be contending next year? Like, we don't need to talk about the lower level teams that are more developing talent, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions there in terms of rotations, and I feel like that's going to be a reoccurring theme in general with when we do our draft recap and talk about some of the players, or at least I'll kind of hint at some of mine, is like, well, a lot of these guys are going to be competing for minutes in certain situations. So I get that argument from a younger team, or team more at the bottom of the standings. But from a team, maybe the playoff teams, who do you think's gotta make the most questions answered before next season?
Well, I think we hit one already with Phoenix, like, because you just have the DeAndre Ayton
Yeah,
situation looming, and that's one that doesn't seem to be getting better. Detroit's obviously a team who could make a big offer there. Maybe Portland if they decide not to bring Nurkic back. Yusuf Nurkic is 28 years old. That blew my mind. I thought he was so much older at this point, just because, I mean, he's been in the league because he got drafted with Jokic. It was 2014, I think, when he got drafted.
they were near
Um,
each other in the draft, right?
no, Denver actually took Jokic ahead of, or Nurkic ahead of him. They took Nurkic at like 20 something. They took Jokic at the
Wow.
40s. Like, that's what's
Wow.
crazy, is that Nurkic was supposed to be the guy initially.
Yeah.
Obviously made the correct decision sticking with Jokic over
Yeah.
Nurkic.
Yeah.
Um, But
I remember
it
that.
just feels like I don't know why. And again, that's strictly just a gut thing, but it feels like Nurkic is way older than that. It's crazy. Um, I think they're number one, and the other one to me is still just Utah. It's Utah, and we'll talk about their coaching hire a little bit later in the episode. But you still have the Gobert Donovan Mitchell situation. It feels like one of them is going to get moved. That's a pretty big deal for a team that has championship aspirations. None of the East teams really have anything major that's looming, I think. Boston, again, teams are making decisions, but like Boston's not making anything major. Neither is Milwaukee. The Sixers aren't really like that. I don't think Brooklyn is. I don't think Miami is. Over out west, like I don't think Denver's really going to shake it up that much. Obviously, like the Warriors, it's bringing depth guys back and who they think. I mean, Dallas would be the other one, and we'll get into Dallas and Jalen Brunson later, but that could just be the biggest straight up off of who they're losing. But in terms of ones that have to make their own decisions, I'm leaning Phoenix and Utah. They're at least among the contenders, I should say.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Kind of actually, here you go. Breaking news from Woj as we're talking here. Knicks are trading Nerlens Noel and guard Alec Burks to the Pistons.
Oh, so they're moving. Okay, so they're moving both. Okay, so that is, dude, they're signing Jalen Brunson. I mean, let's forget it. Let's just talk about it now. Jalen Brunson is apparently going to go for $100 million if you believe the reports to the Knicks. The Knicks have done the least subtle job of implicating that of all time when they hired his dad. For Dallas, it's a big loss. I mean, I know Dallas traded for Dinwiddie. I know they're going to get Tim Hardaway Jr. back, but like Jalen Brunson was a breakout star of the playoffs, and
Sure.
they could have locked him up for 585, which I think is a pretty fair deal for Jalen Brunson. For the Knicks, again, I really like Jalen Brunson. Like, let me be as clear as possible. He is a good player, and he will benefit the Knicks if he goes there. I struggle to see Jalen Brunson being worth $100 million for 4 years. Like, I just don't think Jalen Brunson is that type of player. And I think it's just spending money to spend money almost. Like, you're trying to get this team moving forward. You moved your draft pick on draft night to not
Hmm.
take a lottery player. And so, look, I know you got a couple of nice pieces there. Like, obviously RJ Barrett is great. I like Emmanuel quickly a lot. It feels like with this move, and then if they let Taj Gibson go, with Kemba's money freed up, like that's what they're making it for. But I guess just my question is, do you think Jalen Brunson is good enough to be your number one, number two on a championship team? I don't know that I'm quite there yet, even with the breakout. It's just I don't get what the Knicks logic is doing here. Like it just feels like they continue to overpay guys that are all right. Julius Randle had that crazy all-star year, so it's probably a little different with him. Even though I did kind of think he'd regress a little bit towards the mean like he did last
Yeah.
year. But it's just like I look at that Evan Fournier contract, for example, and how unmovable that is right this second. And I'm not suggesting Jalen Brunson is Evan Fournier, but it really feels like an overpay. And it just doesn't feel like this is the move that moves the needle with the Knicks. Like, again, they just have to have a direction. It doesn't feel like they have a direction right now. Their direction is just kind of floating in the middle, I guess.
Well, and part of me wants to say that the Knicks will benefit obviously from getting Brunson because I remember when we were talking about the Mavericks, we were saying Brunson's emergence and Luca being on the team, you probably didn't need to go star hunting. Is if you just got yourself another scorer or potential big man, which they
Right.
did with Wood, you'd probably be pretty locked in. But again, for the Mavericks side of things, I know if like you gotta, I don't know. I feel like there's a team optics standpoint where if another team's coming and offering this much money and you as a team aren't willing to do something close or equivalent, then you show other guys in the NBA that you're willing to let let the guy that developed with you to go make their money
I
as
agree to
well.
an extent though, because I think like if Dallas just let him walk and didn't recognize his value, then I would
Right.
feel maybe more of that way. Like Dallas to me made a competitive offer, like 5 million,
Yeah.
5 years for 85 million for Jalen Brunson. Like that to me is enough to get
Mhm.
the job done. But if he wants to go
If
to New
I'm
York,
and
he
if
wants to
I'm
go to New York.
well, and I mean I get
You just say get your
the
bag too. Like that's the thing is
right.
like this is Jalen Brunson's big contract. If you got 100 M's
Yeah,
on the
do it.
table, like get it because I that
Yeah,
may
do
not
it.
be there next year. You never know what it is. So
I agree. So there's no fault or hate Jalen Brunson's way,
No,
though.
oh no, it's all about the Knicks. No, it's got nothing to
Right,
do with
right.
Jalen Brunson. Like, let me be as clear as possible. Jalen Brunson, like, he's a big winner out of the draft, honestly,
Yeah.
with the way this is. I mean, yeah, you have a team going out of their way to chase you like that and who are playing you more. I mean, they cleared up all that cap space again just to sign Jalen Brunson.
Well, and
I'm
it's
still
it's like
surprised they
it's
punted on the lottery, but he's going
and
to cash in.
and a big question I'll have, and we'll get it answered in the season, is was Brunson a product of Luca's game as well? And if so, how do you emulate that on the Knicks so that Brunson's game style or that similar game style can flourish for Jalen Brunson?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing, at least in that direction, is I look back to the games where Luca missed and Jalen Brunson was the guy. And again, they were competing, they were going hard. With
The
Nerlens Noel and with Alec Burks, I mean, with Detroit, I mean, you could very well see them being buyout candidates for both of them.
yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, they're going to buy out Kemba, Lord knows too. So,
and so Woj just followed it up. The Knicks are including 2 future second round picks and cash in the deal to incentivize the Pistons, according to ESPN and Woj. The first response is, "Imagine doing all of this for Jalen Brunson."
right. I mean, and that's just kind of my thing. It's like I get the maneuvering, but man, it just feels like they're spending money to spend money, and I hope it doesn't bite them in the end. But I don't know. I don't like punting on the lottery they did. I just feel like that was a
Well,
not great use of resources.
I kind of a little foreshadowing to our draft talk is I highlighted 3 teams, um, and what they did in draft night that I kind of was either a little surprised by or not surprised by or liked, but I'm still cautiously um, waiting to see the results.
Yeah. No, 100%. All right, who's balling? Or oh, we are skipping way ahead. Never mind. Welcome everybody to the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Wow, my name is Kevin
You were
Rayfuse.
flying.
Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
He said, "Now you got me all through." Okay, here it is. I'm going to start celebrating my half birthday. What do y'all think?
I think you should not be celebrating your half birthday. That's what I think. Listen, I get it when you're a young, like if you're a baby, okay, I get it. Like, you celebrate the month by month type thing. Man, I am not, if you're a grown adult, I am not celebrating your half birthday. I'm sorry. That planet is not happening.
Yeah, this person is 30 years old. His birthday is May 4th.
Oh, may the fourth be with him.
Yeah, yeah. Victor Oladipo.
Okay, all right. Vic, I ain't celebrating I'll celebrate your R&B album release party. I ain't celebrating your half birthday.
Okay.
Um, But I mean, shout out to Vic. I'm interested to see what happens with Vic too, because I mean, Vic earned himself some money in the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. He was great for Miami.
Which is such his whole career, I mean, is such a
It's a roller
roller
coaster.
coaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been up and down. I mean, injuries, it stinks because a lot of it is injury based. Like Victor Oladipo
Yeah.
had that great season in Indy, and it just feels like injuries have kind of sapped the ability to get back there. Now, again, good for him for putting in the work and being useful on a great team like Miami. I think he was solid when he was on the Magic as well, but we're talking, 5-6 years ago now at this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully Vic can stay healthy. That's the thing, is like he's definitively good when he's healthy. It's just that's been a big if so far. That's never the thing you like to see. I'm also not celebrating his half birthday still. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, VO. It's just that's not the way. We're not doing that, man. You're 30 years old.
That's fair. So obviously give us a follow on YouTube. We have a video version, although the last few have been slightly delayed because of technical
No, we're
complications.
back now, baby. We got it. We're back.
But we got it figured out. So video is still happening, and it looks like we are looking for subscriber number 40.
Okay.
The Udonis Haslam, the Tyler Zeller, the Harrison Barnes, if you will.
All right.
Um,
All right. Not bad. Not bad. No, I mean, look, Udonis Haslam was good. That's a good number to have. I mean, still play.
yeah,
He's the OG down in Miami, so nothing wrong with that. Multiple
I
time
know.
champion.
It's crazy. He's still going. So,
A lot better than
uh,
39. I'll tell you that.
yes, I
Shout out to our
will.
39 subscriber, though. We appreciate you. You can find the podcast anywhere
Make
you
sure
find
to click
podcasts:
on-
iTunes, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn, iHeart. Listen, if there's a place where you can find a podcast, whether in your car, whether you're working out, I guarantee you we are there.
I had my buddy tell me about he didn't realize podcasts were free, or a good portion of podcasts were free. I was like, dude, what have you been doing with your whole life? So
Dude, it's been like a podcast isn't even a new concept at this point.
he didn't even know there was like he has an iPhone. He didn't even know there was a podcasting app that he can listen on.
So this,
So
your friend is our age you're talking about.
he is our age, yeah. And I told him I was going to give him a hard time and bring it up on the podcast. So
Oh, I was gonna say, what is he? Like, I get it if he's like 60 or something like that.
nope, he's our
Um,
age. But it all happened because he's trying to get more into running, right?
uh-huh.
And I was telling, and he's got like well, you know this, depending on the music, like the run can be really good depending on the music, and if the
Yeah, for
music's
sure.
not good, the run can be really bad.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I did that with podcasts too. Back like I switch it up sometimes. I do a lot of
yeah,
music, but I do podcasts too, especially on longer runs.
well, and obviously it's a very controversial. I guess it's technically a podcast, but it's still controversial because they're not really allowed to be doing what they're doing. But there's a DJ group called Two Friends. They put out the big booty mixes every so often, and they're like, it's like ADD on, you know, those end of the year mixes that they'll always do on radio.
Mhm.
That's like a bunch of the hooks of the songs together in
Yeah.
one.
Yep.
It's that, but it's an hour long, and they take random trending clips from social media, specifically like TikTok, and they throw them in there as the drops. And it's sometimes like it'll be like a Kiss song with like the Kiss song instrumental with Olivia Rodrigo singing over it, and then it does a beat drop into Martin Garrix's song, and you're just like, "Whoa, how are we here?" And it's like 6 seconds, and it's changing every time. They're legally not allowed to do it, so it gets taken down all the time. But
Yeah.
it is a good motivator for a run.
Yeah, if you want to find the quickest way to get your podcast taken down, let me tell you something. Play some music in the background and they will snipe it. It doesn't matter how old it is, what the song is,
Nope.
how many clips. I have seen those trending though, those mixes. I honestly didn't know the deal about it. So I learned something tonight. We know I am the much more washed half of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Justin is way more hip than me. Which I feel like
I
me
don't
saying
know.
that you're way more hip than me kind of explains it all right there.
I don't know. There's a lot of like pop
Justin,
culture
you
things that
have a
I don't.
TikTok, bro. You have a following. Like, I don't even have the app.
Yeah, well, honestly, if from reports, if you want to believe them coming out, that's probably a good thing. So, you know,
Wait, what?
no, there's like they're saying that your information on TikTok's getting shared all over the world right
I
now.
thought it
So,
was like wasn't it some Chinese thing? Like, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist on this podcast, but I heard the Chinese government was running it.
well, yes, and that was why it was supposed to be banned in the U.S. And then they created a U.S. office so that it could be run out of the U.S. But apparently, that office is still sending stuff. If you believe it, is still
Oh,
sending stuff.
good, because we don't
Yeah.
have enough problems in America going on right now. That's another thing we need to worry about. We're doing real great as a country going into the 4th of July, let me tell you. And now a word from our
Mhm.
sponsors.
So, draft night, I actually was flying home to help my parents move. So, I found myself in a bit of an interesting situation, obviously, because I didn't have a TV around me, and I knew Woj was going to be putting out that teams were genuinely concerned with certain players and overly happy about all
Break
these.
the thesaurus out.
Yeah, pretty much pulling out every word in the dictionary. But what I decided to do is I decided to put my phone on airplane mode early and miss out on all of it, so that when I landed, it would just be like a flood of info. Because I landed at like 9, so the first hour ish of the draft was already done. Um, and I gotta say, Orlando Magic, obviously with the number one pick, surprised me.
Oh, dude, the Magic pulled off one of like Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell would be envious of the stealth maneuvering that the Magic pulled off here. And I mean, I guess if there's a lesson, it's that, Vegas knows because Vegas had it 24 hours before. They
Did
bumped
it
all those
really?
lines. Oh my God, they bumped the Bancaro lines like crazy. It flipped completely where you woke up in the morning of the draft and it was every single major sports book had Bancaro going number one. And that was at a point still where you had Woj tweeting that Jabari
Yeah.
Smith was going number one.
Well,
I think
and
most people here in Orlando were under the impression at the time that Jabari Smith was going to go number one. It sure felt like it was going to be Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and then Paulo Banchero to
yeah,
Houston. And shouts about our guy Andy Jordan for coming on and doing the draft preview with us last week. That's what we were basically settled on at as well. The Chet Holmgren OKC part was true. But give the Magic credit. They really just put smoke screens everywhere. Their process was really, I mean, Jeff Weltman talked about it afterwards. Like they intentionally were secret about it. And in an era where everything leaks now, it really was. It was surprised that Banchero went number one. And I'm not even saying it's the wrong pick, but it did surprise me for sure.
Well, and with Banchero, I guess it did surprise me too. Like I did. I think you were on it as well. But Chase's little quick roundtable of what the Orlando Magic should do on his podcast, which you can go listen to Chase's Burning Hot Takes.
Yeah, bunkers burning hot takes.
I said Smith. Yeah, yeah. But I said Jabari Smith. Like I thought I think it was every draft but two that were like, the big ones. NBA.com puts out their list and they talk about all the other ones. All but two said Jabari Smith. So I was like, why would I even consider somebody else? Because this is usually when they're that honed in on one guy, that means we're going. And I went through all the situations why I liked it. I thought he was going to match the Orlando, defense, and he was going to complement all the other players. And so my thing with Banchero is I think he still does that, but it does make me wonder a little more about Jonathan Isaac, and his if he's playing and his potential future with the Orlando Magic, obviously with the injuries.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like, Jonathan Isaac to me is purely house money at this point. Like, if you get Jonathan Isaac back healthy and he can give you anything, which is crazy because he was at one point probably the crown jewel of this next wave of Magic players. But again, just due to injuries, he hasn't been able to get on the floor. Like, he's objectively good when he plays, but at this point, you can't depend on him. I mean, we haven't seen Jonathan Isaac since the bubble. It's sad, but he feels like more of a concept at this point. For the Magic, though, I mean, here's the thing. Like, they just couldn't afford to miss on this pick. That was the one thing that, we were talking about. And with Chet Holmgren, it was obviously way more of, I think Chet Holmgren could have the highest ceiling out of anybody, but he also could bust harder than anybody. And I think that, his timeline doesn't necessarily fit what the Magic are trying to do. Like the Magic they've got a pretty good nucleus of young players between Franz Wagner, between even like a Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, you still think is going to develop. They have options there. And I think bringing in Banchero to me is probably the most NBA ready guy right away. Like he could very well win Rookie of the Year, and I don't think it would surprise me at all. I think he's not a great 3-point shooter, but he can score pretty well at the other two levels. And I think he's not a great defender yet, but I think he has the potential to be. Like, I think that part of his game will get a lot better. So I don't know. I go back and forth because I think Jabari Smith can shoot the basketball. Like, I just think Jabari Smith is a 3-and-D guy. Those are the two skills that you want in today's NBA more than any other. And I don't know. I felt like Jabari Smith was a little safer. And to that token, obviously, I think it's a great pick for Houston at 3. I think definitely, I mean, they made the decision easy once they went with Banchero and you knew Chet Holmgren was going too. But I don't think the Magic struck out here. Like, I think this is a good pick. We'll see how good Paolo is. Unfortunately, just because, this wasn't a draft with a clear number one. So I think there are always going to be those comparisons. But I mean, he's pretty NBA ready now in terms of the top guys. So I think you have to feel excited about that if you're a Magic fan for sure.
Yeah, I like it. I like it from that aspect. From sharing the scoring load, sharing the minutes, rebounds. He'll be competing a little bit with some other Orlando Magic players. But I wonder if just that alone, maybe, like I could see Orlando Magic fans say we're halfway through the season and there's another rookie guy, whoever it is, right? That's on, if it's the Thunder or another team and is the main guy or has to be one of the main guys for scoring, like then I could see Orlando Magic fans being like, oh my God, we picked the wrong person. We're not this, we're not that. And that's what I said on Chase's podcast. I said the only downside in this draft, because there's not a number one, and obviously it'll happen in every draft, but because there's not a number one, the hindsight when it is 2020 is going to be louder and more critical because there wasn't a clear, you don't have that clear, well, this guy was the number
Or
one
even
pick.
well, right, like, look at last year too,
Right.
where, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, who won Rookie of the Year, obviously, like, they had moments where they were better than Cade Cunningham in his first year, but I don't think anyone in Detroit was ever like, "No, we made the wrong decision." It
Right.
was like, "No, you made the right one." And I still think Cade's
Right.
ceiling is a little bit higher than everybody
Or
from that class. I do. I think those comparisons will be there for sure. I agree with that 100%. Like, he and Jabari Smith are gonna
but
get
I'll
a ton of
even
comps.
But I'll even say when you go back to the Ben Simmons draft, like everyone tried to pull that up when obviously Ben was doing his thing and the Celtics were in the finals, and the response was, well, Ben was the clear number one. Like there
Yeah,
was no doubt that there's like
there
don't
was
even try
no
us with that.
planet where anyone thought Jaylen Brown was going to be a better player than
Right.
Ben Simmons at that draft. People were furious that the Celtics took Jaylen Brown. Like, everyone wanted Chris Dunn. People forget that. Like, that was a little bit of a surprise pick. Jaylen Brown, when he got drafted, was all potential. Now, obviously, great
It
pick
worked
in
out.
hindsight. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely smoked that pick. Jaylen Brown is awesome. But, no, that's a situation where, yeah, Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram were way higher on draft boards than Jaylen Brown was at that time. Um, that was genuinely, again, one of the bigger surprises. I think there were people here in Orlando who were a little disappointed that they didn't trade back. I think there are people who kind of, they go to that Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum trade where if you've got a guy you're locked in on and you think you can get him at 3, why not recoup a little bit of value there? But at the same time, like, if Paolo Banchero is your guy, if you're locked in him at number 1 and you think he's your thing, or he's going to be your centerpiece, I
But
don't think you
I
mess around. I think you draft the guy that you want.
But I think you could also make the argument of if it's so close that nobody seems to really agree, and I get it if the front office
Oh,
felt
I
their way, they felt
agree.
their way. But you could say, all right, let's go talk to the Thunder and make it look like we're gonna take their guy and see if they want to move up, and then we'll get an extra little asset out of this. I totally get it. And it's kind of what the Celtics did to the Sixers with Tatum and Markel Fultz,
Well,
you
it is,
know?
and that's the best case scenarios where it
Yeah,
worked out for Boston. Like, Tatum
right,
is the guy; he's a potential top 10 player in the NBA right now, and you recouped because you got the value back. Where
right.
and again, I will say, Markel Fultz, the number 1 consensus pick
Of
at the
course,
time, like,
of course.
that's an easy one in hindsight, but I can understand that logic and that thinking of trying to recoup because, like you said, in a year where there's not a
And
number
again,
1, if
yeah,
you can add all of it, that makes a lot more sense. I don't think you're entirely wrong there.
and then even if you get to a point where, say, the guy who goes second or the guy that goes third is at least in the first year a better player or has more production, it's like, well, we got our guy, he's still developing, plus we've got another late round first pick or second pick, whatever it was down the line, we also have that.
Yeah,
So I wonder if there is some moves that happen for the Orlando Magic down the line, or if they shake up the team a little bit more, and obviously that'll be left to be
they've got
seen.
a lot of guards, so they're gonna start to figure it out. But I think this year is again where you have to be excited. They're starting to put it together. For OKC, I mean, obviously Chet Holmgren is a project, but that's the perfect place for it. Like, they're dragging this out, right? And again, I think his ceiling is high. So if there's a place for him to, adequately take the time to develop, it feels like OKC is that spot. So again, Chet's got to put on some weight for sure, but the instincts are crazy. I really like the Thunder's Jalen Williams pick as well. I mean, he's more of a win now type guy because that's the thing too. Is like with Shea Gilgis Alexander, like you got to have he wants to win too. Like, the Thunder can't afford to just drag this out forever. They do need to start putting some signs together, but I also think they're closer than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Like, Josh Giddey's a genuinely good player. Lou Dort's a solid role player. If Chet comes in giving you anything right away, then you got to feel pretty good about what they have foundation wise. And then obviously a zillion picks coming in the future as well.
Well, and apparently, Holmgren bailed on the final day of his, pre-draft workout stuff with Orlando Magic. So I wonder if what's up with that, or maybe he just didn't want to go to Orlando, and maybe maybe that played a part in their decision and everybody's decision.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think again, Orlando, I don't think was ever going to draft Chet Holmgren.
No,
They're again because they're closer now. OKC isn't as close now. And so that's why I think they have the potential there to let him grow. So it's a good place for him. I think that I mean Chet Holmgren would have had the Gonzaga tags with with Jalen Suggs, but I don't think you're worried about that too much. Obviously, I love the Jabari Smith pick for Houston. I think that they just fall into their laps is a great scenario. It's interesting because I don't know, like people are bashing the Kings for not drafting Jaden Ivey, but I really like Keegan Murray for this Kings squad. Like I think he fits what they're doing a little more. I thought he was great at Iowa last year. Like I saw a lot of flack for the Kings, like not trading back or just not going for Jaden Ivey when. And don't get me wrong, I love the Jaden Ivey pick for Detroit. Like I think he's a great fit there. I think he's going to be awesome. But I think from a fit perspective, Keegan Murray may make a little more sense than drafting another guard would when you've drafted Davion Mitchell, you've got De'Aaron Fox. I mean, I know you moved on from Halliburton, but it's like, why do you want to create another logjam there?
Well, and that was kind of my thinking was like the poor Kings, like we gave them so much crap when they did that, and now that they didn't do that, we're still hating on them for it. And I guess that's just what happens when you're a team that just hasn't really been successful in a while. But yes, Keegan Murray, I like it. I thought his play style complements Sabonis a lot. Should be able to spread the floor. Now, I will say, with Sabonis, Fox, Keegan Murray, now it's like we need to see the Kings staff and coaching kind of put it all together and one, develop this guy, but two, let's start seeing something here. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're thirsty for the playoffs. Like this has been an organization that we don't need to keep rubbing it in. They've been in hell pretty much for the past decade
Right.
plus. So they're definitely a little thirsty. But I think this is they didn't Kings this move. Like I think they did the right thing here. Obviously for Jaden Ivey going to Detroit, he'll get a lot more playing time too. And I think that's one of the bigger appeals there. I like Detroit's draft overall. Not just in terms of because we'll get into the Jeremy Grant trade a little bit, but yeah, they're on to something, man. I love Cade Cunningham. Sadiq Bey had a really good breakout year, and they've
Hmm.
just got a ton of cap space now. Like you have $53 million in cap space. Maybe that's good for a run at DeAndre Ayton. They go out and get a big man. But if not, you're going to put yourself in position. And if that young core is good, it won't necessarily be as hard to attract young players there as it may have been in the past. Detroit's made the playoffs a couple of times. It's largely, I don't think they've won a series since '08, I believe I read. But it really, I thought Detroit had a nice draft. They took advantage of the Knicks, I thought, getting Kemba Walker's contract, which for them with all that cap space, obviously is not an issue. But being able to add Jalen Duren in there, it was a good draft for Detroit. I think they're building something. Like, I think they're really, again, I don't know that they're going to make the push next year. I don't think it's that type of instant impact, but they're going to be fun. I think they're going to be higher on the league pass rankings than a lot of people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, I think they'll be like you said, a young, fun team to watch, and a few years of development, and they're going to be right in it and be a bit of a problem.
Is there anybody else outside? Because I know we've been talking about the top five. Is there
Yeah.
anybody else that you have in terms of like sleepers that you loved, or maybe like a winner or a loser, anything on that front?
I was just reading about Dang a little bit from the New Zealand Breakers that actually ended up on the Knicks. So there is a bit of that I wanted to read into, but I'm only interested mainly because of the New Zealand ties. I wanted to read a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
But it does lead me into the Knicks, and it's not a sleeper pick, but they definitely upset their fans again at draft night, which was kind of like prime Knicks thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen A. Smith looked like he was. I mean, what? His head in his hands the whole time. Everybody was dumping on the Knicks. It felt like the old
Yeah,
days. Um, yeah. I again, we talked Jalen Brunson a little bit. I don't want to keep beating the drum, but it
yeah.
feels like they're going a little too hard for Jalen Brunson. Good player, but I'm not going to just change everything I do stylistically here.
It's
Um,
it's it's a it's a it's a prime example of like, did you ever grow up with, and I know it won't be fully like 100% the same scenario, but you ever grow up where you and your brother or you and your sister um got a toy, and you both were deciding which one you wanted and you picked it, and then like 2 hours later you see your sibling having way more fun with their toy
you
than
got
you are with
fleeced.
yours. Yeah, so you're like, oh, we got to make this trade, and then you make the trade, and then that person you make the trade with is now got your toy, and they're looking like they're having more fun with that than this. I wonder if this is going to be that kind of situation in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. That should be finalized here in the next couple of days. I mean, hell, there's a chance it gets finalized after we're recording this.
before we post, because that always seems to be the way that that goes.
Well, especially with free agency in full swing right now. In terms of everything, I mean, in terms of the drafts, besides that, there wasn't really a lot of movement. Like you had multiple teams with multiple picks, so you thought maybe there'd be some bouncing around. But in terms of major players, who's the biggest player that got moved on draft night? I know Kemba Walker's the biggest name. So with him, but that was essentially a cap dump at this point. I mean,
Yeah, wasn't Jeremy Grant, was Jeremy Grant during the draft, or was that
no,
after?
Jeremy Grant
Like
was
during
a
that?
few days before that. I mean, the biggest player that may have been moved during the draft was DeAnthony Melton from the Grizzlies to the Sixers. And don't
Yeah,
get me wrong, I'm excited about that move as a Sixers
yeah,
fan. Like, that's exactly the type of player we need to add. I'm a little surprised Memphis let him go. They did get 23 out of that, so you get a first rounder.
yeah, and he kind of
Danny Green is coming off ACL, so he's strictly a contract thing at this point.
yeah
Um,
clearing. But I will say the Melton pick, it kind of, I was talking to my buddy because I was home about it, so I was watching all the Sixers sports heads react. And he kind of reminds me of like Thibault, just Thibault who's able to put up 10 points a game.
yeah, right. He can actually hit the three ball. Like Matisse Thybulle's willing to pull it, he just
Yeah.
doesn't hit it ever.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, so that's kind of what it felt like, and so from a down the line, you would imagine that means Thibault probably gonna
He's
get traded.
expendable. And I
Yeah,
think the
and
Sixers are going to I don't think the Sixers are done. Like, let me
do
be as clear as
you?
possible.
Let me ask you this though, and I know we're going down a Sixers rabbit hole, but just because I was up there and they were really focusing on, do you put any weight behind the tweet that was deleted by Maxi?
No, I didn't even see that. What did he tweet?
He tweeted, so I believe it was during the Kyrie rumors.
Uh huh.
So that didn't help things. He tweeted never again dot dot dot.
Oh,
And then
Justin, is that what I'm falling for right now? Never again with three
dude,
dots?
dude, it was everywhere up there. Like people were like, "We're
Oh
trading."
my God.
My
People need to
my
relax with
my
Maxi of all players?
dude, my friend's mom quite literally was crying because she thought Maxi was going to leave and go to the Nets,
Oh,
and
I mean, I'm
said she was going to become a Nets fan if it happened.
okay. If Tyrese Maxey gets traded for Kevin Durant, then that's a
You
different
have to do
story.
it.
Like,
I
listen,
know.
guys, I love Tyrese Maxey more than any Sixer that's not named Joel Embiid. He gave me life in a season that, the
He
Sixers
really
are
did.
like he's been one of the best finds that the Sixers have had in years. He's a fan favorite. He plays the game the right way. I genuinely think the kid's going to be a star. There is no planet where I am not trading him for Kevin Durant if I have the
What
opportunity to.
what
Like,
what
let's get real here for a second.
what about Kyrie though?
No, I'm not trading for Kyrie. There's no planet where I'm trading for. No.
So
Listen,
so
that's the thing. There's a big difference between Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant
right,
is
right.
look. He may be on Twitter a little too much, but I ain't worried about Kevin Durant blowing the squad up like I am with Kyrie. Kyrie's gonna come in here and just be a oh man, like because I don't want to. Kyrie's not an evil person, but I ain't trading for him at this point. There's no
Well,
planet where I'm trading for Kyrie
my
Irving unless it's
my
free.
my buddy pretty much was trying to say Maxi and Kyrie were the same players skill set wise, and I was like,
No, I
but
don't agree with that. I mean,
no.
yeah, what? Because they're both fast and play point guard. Like, I get
Right.
that. No, okay, they're a little bit. Kyrie's a way better shooter. Though Maxi obviously did step it up as far as I know. Tweet never again. That could have been about as going to what Chinese restaurant he went to for
I
that
don't know,
night.
man.
Like,
He deleted it though, which is the weird part.
yeah, because maybe he subbed his girlfriend or something. Like, I don't know what's going on here. The kid is 21 years old. No, the Sixers fans have a lot more things to be that they can be worried about than be worried about Tyrese
We
Maxey
can
leaving.
we can be good. His last thing is he just retweeted that he was hanging out with Brian Westbrook at a
Sick.
signing event, I guess. It is insane how much taller that he is than Brian Westbrook.
Yeah, because Maxey's not big, like compared to NBA
That's what I
standards.
mean.
Like you never realize how good because that's the thing is like you'll see smaller NBA players, like even Steph Curry, for example. Like Steph
Mhm.
Curry's what 6'3", 6'4". I know right people that are 6'3", 6'4". But yeah, when you put them next to, I mean, especially with NHL because they're on skates, obviously, so they're not even really that big to begin with usually. But even like you put them next to the biggest football players, the biggest baseball players, they don't they are towering over them
Yeah.
every single time. Football players, you just notice like I'll never forget when because I interned at Sirius XM NFL radio back in the day. That was one of my college internships. I remember Terrell Suggs came in And Terrell Suggs was just built like a rock, like one of the best NBA player or NFL linebackers at the time. Like the Ravens had just won the Super Bowl. And like, listen, bro, there was no fat on his body, but he wasn't that tall. He was about my height. He just was like a
See,
beast, like,
Austin Hooper is from Jacksonville, if I have that right. And so he came to our sports show when we were doing it,
Mhm.
and tight end. So he's obviously tall. He was probably 6'6", but dude was just like he was just massive,
Oh yeah.
like strength wise. Not saying fat or anything, just big dude.
Oh
Like
yeah.
holy cow, dude. So it was pretty cool. I think my forehead probably made it to his like chin. Like
Oh, dude, I tell the story about when I held the door for Vooch all the time at Wine Bar on Park Ave in Orlando, and it was like, bro, which because I mean it was raining, so like
Mhm.
you don't see the shadow. It's like I no sooner look up, it's like I'm at the bottom of his stomach. It's
Yeah.
like, oh hey, what's up, Vooch? Good to see you, man.
Well, or when we were at Summer League and Porzingis walked by, it was like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
this
I
dude
forgot KP
is
was at Summer League.
huge.
I mean, yeah, KD was the same way too. I mean,
Yeah. Oh well.
KD's
Yeah.
6'10".
I almost stepped on his foot.
Yeah, and that
It
was
was
like
it
coming
was
off the surgery
it
too.
was
So that would have
broken
been
at the time.
it was like that. What's that? Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I did not like religiously
Did
though.
you watch the episode where he tripped Shaq?
No, but
Oh yeah,
that's
no, he's sitting
hilarious.
courtside. He tripped Shaq in the middle of the game. He has to go visit him in the hospital. It's great. It's real funny. You should go check that out later.
That was, I mean, I did that, and I looked over at him, and I realized what had almost happened, and he was just like, "A lot of people would have been really mad at you," and I was just like,
I mean,
"Ugh." I'm
hey,
just gonna keep
whatever.
going.
That's your KD story. All right,
Yeah,
who's
for
balling?
real.
Who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. So balling for me this week, I got a pair of coaching hires. First, you got with the Jazz. That was a new one today. Will Handy coming down from Boston, 34 years old, going to be the youngest coach in the NBA. He's a guy who has been on a lot of radars for a long time. And this is a good hire. I really like look when they lost Quinn Snyder, you wonder if they're going to be replacing because Quinn Snyder's a good coach. Like you wonder what type of assistant you can get to bring in there. I know there have been a lot of Sam Cassell rumors. I would have been fine if they went that direction too. But Will Hardy, this is look. I mean, spent the year under Ime Udoka. His coaching tree is strong. Got brought up with a number of teams, vacancies that are opening. It feels like he's been one of those guys for a while. So I think that's a good hire for them. Obviously, he's going to get. It'll be interesting to see what roster he's coaching exactly. Have to imagine the Danny Ainge ties there played in a little bit as well. With Ainge now in that front office, obviously formerly in Boston. So you think that they go back a little bit. But
He
then
also, Hardy also coached with Pop,
yeah,
Team USA.
Yeah, so Pop's tree remains strong. And then the other one is Steve Clifford, a little bit of a surprise here, going back to Charlotte. Obviously, Clifford coached Charlotte a few years ago, had that stint here in Orlando a little bit. He basically, I mean, he and the Magic had parted ways more because the Magic were going into a rebuild. And, Steve Clifford was just not super interested in a rebuild at the time, which is completely understandable. It's interesting because obviously Charlotte kind of had their backs up against the wall with how the Kenny Atkinson situation played out. Just crazy. I mean, losing him right before the draft. But I mean, Cliff had a few good years there. I think like Charlotte's big need is defensive, right? Like they really had to improve on that side of the ball. I think one of the biggest reasons I liked Atkinson over D'Antoni was because I feel like he would install more fundamentals on that side. And I think that's what Steve Clifford will be good at here. I also think if you're Charlotte, you got to feel pretty good that in his intro press conference, he said, yeah, no, we're not going to let Miles Bridges walk out the door, which is something that I was a little worried about for the Hornets, where it's kind of like, guys, what are you doing? Spend the money here. Like, this is a no brainer. So it's good to see. It's good to see that it seems like there's being progress getting made on
Mhm.
that front. I mean, they extended the qualifying offer, but all indications are that he's coming back. But kind of interesting. I don't know that Steve Clifford is maybe necessarily the guy to take him over the top and be there if they're going to win titles and such. But I mean, this is a team that's thirsty for the playoffs. Like they really are looking to get back here. You want to see some progress with LaMelo Ball. And so to that point, I do think this is a good hire for Charlotte.
Yeah, and his strength is defensive coaching. And Charlotte was top 12 for the year last year. It just does feel weird that you're going back, and it wasn't And maybe it's because it wasn't their first choice on top of them going back. It feels a little weird. I'm not saying I hate it. It's just kind of one of those things you look at like, oh, you're going back with your ex because you couldn't move on to greener pastures in a way, you know?
I don't know if I'm the person to talk about getting back with your ex. So, oh, was that
All right,
was
well,
that
fair
too
enough.
was that too personal for the pod?
No, you're
Uh,
good. Yeah, you know, can't hate on it.
all right, who's
But I
balling
will
for you
say
this
there. I
week?
don't know. Yeah, we'll move on. So balling for me is Russell Westbrook. It may not be balling for
Oh,
Lakers
Lakers
fans,
fans
but
are pissed. They're already throwing stuff at you. They are furious.
Westbrook opting into his final year for 47 million, which is left on his contract with the Lakers. So we'll see if that holds true on keeping him with the Lakers.
I mean, this is a brainer for Russ. Like, take your 47 million. Like, guy, you ain't getting that anywhere else.
Get your money.
So I mean, again, I feel like a broken record with this, but it's like, yeah, this is just kind of what reality is for the Lakers right now. Like, the move hasn't worked out. You've got one more year on the contract, and you just got to suck it up. Now, the issue for sucking it up is you've got LeBron James on the roster, and so it's hard to, suck up a LeBron James and Anthony Davis here, when ideally you're trying to get back to where you were a few years ago and contend for titles. Lord knows LeBron is not getting any younger, even as great as he still is. So I think the Lakers can be better. I mean, obviously, I do think Darvin Ham was a good hire for them. If Anthony Davis just improves and can get healthy and stay on the court consistently, I think that'll go a long way too. But this is just the reality of the situation. You're not going to find any trade suitor with that contract. And so you're just kind of stuck in neutral.
Well, it makes me wonder, does it make us hypocrites for wanting him to or saying that you have to do this, but then hoping that Harden doesn't do the same?
I mean, no, I wouldn't say that makes it. I mean, look, let me be as clear as possible. If I was a Lakers fan, I would not be rooting for him to opt in. Like, just the
I
same way
know.
for the Sixers. Like, I'm not rooting for them to give Harden a super max like that. If you want to
Yeah.
max him for a year or two, that's fine. I
But
don't
even if
think
he takes
Harden is
his
also at that level either. Like, Harden's for sure declined a little bit, but like
but he's better.
Russ, I don't think you can put on a winning team at this point of his career, unless he radically accepts a different bench role. And I mean, that's going to be the question. Like, Russell Westbrook can still do some things well. Like, he leads the league in assists over the past like 5 or 6 years, I believe, like cumulative assists. It's just, look, like the same way the benefit of the doubt is gone with Kyrie, it's gone with Russell Westbrook in terms of stylistically changing his game up. You hope they can. You hope you maximize the situation, and maybe it gets better with year two. But yeah, I mean, they're just kind of stuck, and everybody
Yeah,
knew Russ was going to opt in. Like, Russ 100% for him made the right decision. Like, let me be as clear as possible. That's a no brainer opt in.
you got to
Um,
do it.
and and we'll see what happens after a year. Like, Russ is not going to bounce out of the league. It's just he's not going to get that max money anymore. So that's the other thing too. Is like, yeah, this is your last max contract. Realistically, like you're not getting a 5-year max from anybody after this.
So take it.
Given the way that it's played out. Falling for me this week is Shaq, man. Shaq was a little bit petty with Rudy Gobert here. So he was talking about today's generation of NBA players, right? And basically said that the quote was, "You think I'm happy Rudy Gobert's making 250 million? Goddamn right we get mad. We get petty. I think it's a little bit of truth in our criticism." Which Kevin Durant quotes tweeted that, and it's hilarious they called him by his first name because nobody calls Shaq not Shaq. And he's like, Shaquille is hilarious. You're a billionaire, bro. LOL. And that's kind of my point. Is it's like, Shaq, why are you hating on the new guys for getting paid? Like, the league is different now. If Shaq was playing in this league, he'd be getting that bag too. Like, I'm not going to fault the guys for the league changing, the business changing. Like, if somebody wants
Right.
to pay Rudy Gobert all that money, let the man get paid.
Well, and to that, it's like, sure, Shaq, if you want to pick out a player that's getting paid a ton of money that probably doesn't deserve a ton of money, like pick a player and say it then, and then we can kind of understand with what you're trying to come with. But like you said, this way just seems petty and mad that they're winning money, and at that point, nobody's really
Well,
gonna
you are. You're
be.
just you're hating on the next
Yeah,
man's pockets. Like, no one from an NBA perspective thinks that Rudy Gobert is better than Shaq. So it's like it's not like
right,
there's that weird argument going on there on the all-time list. Like, no one on earth would reasonably argue that. Like,
right.
it's just like, imagine Oscar Robertson going on a podcast and being like, man, these guys made millions of dollars back in the 70s. We were still flying regular coach. And it's like, yeah, I feel you, bro. But like, what are you going to do? It's a different generation. Like, I don't know. Don't be mad at the young guys for getting their money. Like Shaq would have got that money too. And also, again, it does come off when like, Shaq is rich. That man endorses everything.
Yeah, Shaq, your son's probably gonna get paid. You know, like
Yeah,
he'll
that's true.
eventually get there
And
and
Shaq
do
made a
his
ton of
thing.
money playing too. It's not like he was making, he wasn't making pennies his whole career. It was rubbing two wooden nickels together.
Right, right. I completely agree. Well, you mentioned the podcast stuff, and that actually leads me into my following. JJ Redick and Draymond Green finally got together for a podcast, although a lot of the internet said they sold out and did it.
New media, baby.
Yeah, it really is though. So and Draymond Green is the king at saying some clickbaity stuff. I'm telling you, man, he really is. So they were talking about, the runs with Kevin Durant and when they didn't have Kevin Durant. And, Draymond Green gave Durant his props and said he probably doesn't get enough credit for those times. But then there was a conversation of would they have beaten the Rockets in 2018 and 2019 if they didn't have Durant? And Green's response was, yeah, we were beating them for sure. Are you kidding me? And then he goes, that team was never going to beat us. It was just not going to happen. I'm
I don't
sure
agree with. No, I
James
don't agree
Harden's
with
going
that
to
at
feel some
all.
kind of way. You don't? Well, because what? They
No, not
had him.
without K. No, not without
They,
KD. I mean, I agreed with him that they wouldn't beat the Cavs without KD those last 2 years.
what year was it that they were, am I getting it mixed up with Chris Paul where he had the hamstring injury? Where
No, that
they
was
had it.
no, that was 17.
17? Oh, okay.
It was the first year with KD, and because Dre later went on, which was interesting because he basically said that without KD that they wouldn't. He doesn't think they would have been championship level, which is interesting because they won 73 games and lost to
Yeah.
Cleveland by one game in a 7-game series by basically one possession, more or less, in the
Hmm.
2016 finals after they had won in 2015. So I don't know that I fully agree with that. I do think, like, obviously, and I agree with what Draymond is saying, and I think that's where people don't give Kevin Durant enough credit is that that Warriors team was already solidified as a champion. There's no doubt about it. They're not a dynasty without Kevin Durant. Like Kevin
Right.
Durant was crucial to have for those 2 years, and he essentially made them invincible. Like when he was playing there was never a doubt that they were going to not win both of those titles. Now, I think obviously in hindsight, I mean, Steph Curry's continued just greatness has shown.
Hmm.
And I think the Warriors just showed that they don't need Kevin Durant with the proper depth to win a title. But did Kevin Durant guarantee them 2 titles basically and put them in that conversation and make it a situation where, because I mean, that's the thing is like that 2017 Cavs team is probably better than the one that won the finals. It's just that's the way the game breaks sometimes. And they took advantage of a historical cap increase, and KD put them over the top. I do think KD doesn't get enough credit for that in the sense that it was like, yeah, when they needed, and Draymond talked about it on the pod, is where it's like when they needed a guy who go get a bucket, it was Kevin Durant at that time. Like KD was the baddest guy on the planet for a little bit. It was him and LeBron in that conversation. Obviously, I think Steph and Dre will always be, the core identity and the nucleus around the way they play basketball. But again, Kevin Durant doesn't get enough credit for making them invincible.
Hmm.
I think the flack with KD comes is just that, yeah, he didn't win outside of that system. Like he hasn't won that title. That's kind of what he's still chasing and what has eluded him to this point where, yeah, obviously with the system, you got to feel pretty good because the Warriors are back here on top of the mountain. So I think, of course, they all feel validated in that regard. But it was nice to see Draymond give KD credit because I do. I think in a way, again, he and Steph will always be compared. And I personally have Steph Curry higher on my all-time list than Kevin Durant. But, make no bones about it. Like that duo was unstoppable for a little bit. Like that, it should be their greatness should be appreciated.
I completely agree. It's so funny to me that Durant or not Durant, Draymond Green has taken to social media so well now that he is, whether it's just a clip from the podcast or something he's saying, man, it is always polarizing. And so he's got that formula locked down. Um,
Him and Perk got a little personal. And like, I'm not gonna.
well, yeah,
They said
yeah.
a bunch of words and a bunch of like statements, and that go have a bunch of themes that I'm not gonna get into as a white man on this podcast. But like, that felt like that was far, even for Draymond.
Did you see? And this is just because they're having that beef. Did you see? Oh. Adrian Peterson and somebody else agreed to a boxing match.
Yeah, why are both of these guys? Yeah, it's Adrian Peterson and it's Le'Veon Bell, and I'm really
Bell,
sad
that's right.
about it, honestly, because it's just like it feels like a joke, and it feels like they both don't have money, and that's that's what it feels like, I guess, to me. And again, I don't know their financial situations, but that feels like a broke move.
Well, what I was going to suggest, easy for me to say, Perk and Draymond should be on the undercard and be fighting on that card.
Perk's a big dude, man. I'll say that,
I know.
Like Dre's tough, but like Perk is a big dude.
I wouldn't mess with Perk. Listen. He was
Mans
towards
was
the end of
known
his.
as an enforcer during
He
his
was an
time, like
enforcer for a reason. Yeah.
so.
But
Uh,
either way, so some other little kind of news tidbits that have been going on. Another big thing that happened is John Wall agreed to a buyout with the Rockets and is planning to sign a free agent deal with the Clippers. At this point, I don't feel like we necessarily know what we will get or see from John Wall just because we haven't seen John Wall in a while, it feels like. Um, so part of me is excited to see what that might potentially be.
I'm excited to see. Oh, I'm definitely excited to see John Wall back. Like, here's the thing: John Wall already got $40 million from the Rockets this year without playing a single game. So I think there, right there, you have the flexibility. Like, that's the beauty of it. He can kind of go wherever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you lock in with Kawhi and PG. You look at what that Clippers depth did last year. Here's the thing: if it works out, great. You've got a point guard rotation of John Wall and Reggie Jackson. That's pretty solid playing your one. Like Reggie was great last year. If John Wall even gives you flashes of old John Wall, you got to be pretty happy about it because again, it's not like you're paying a ton of money for him.
Agreed.
And that's just what it all comes down to for me. Is like I don't think there's any downside here. Even if John Wall sucks and is just totally completely washed and can't play NBA basketball anymore, because it has been a while. Obviously, a ton of injuries that he's been rehabbing from. There's no real downside to it for the Clippers. That's not going to be the type of move that sinks your season. And it has all the upside in the world. I am excited to see John Wall on a basketball floor, though. I'm with you. Like we haven't seen him play in a while. Ton of injuries. Would just love to see him back playing meaningful basketball. I think that's the most important thing because he was. I mean, he was great during his Wizards run.
Well,
Um,
and even I think it was 40 games that he played for the Rockets. I'm
yeah,
looking at in 2020 to
40
2021.
games, 40 M's. What a world!
Yeah, and he averaged 26 points and almost 7 assists. So like if you're getting that, that's really good. Plus a
Yeah.
healthy Kawhi, plus Chris Paul, Paul George. Like yo, we're gonna be right back in it.
No, they're on to no, they're on to something. I mean, it's them and the Warriors next year. Like they're Clippers are if assuming their depth is there on paper right now, they're probably the deepest team in the NBA. And they just re-signed Zubac, 3-year, $33 million
Yes,
deal. Really good for them. Again, keeping him in house. They really like what he does there. So yeah, no, the Clippers are really good. They can be, they're again not a lock to win the title, I would say, but they're definitely going to be in that conversation, assuming health next year. That's the biggest hesitation. Kawhi's dealt with injuries. Paul George missed a significant amount of time last year, so you definitely got to watch out for that. But again, you have nothing to lose by picking up John Wall, so that's a good look for them. And then hitting the Jeremy Grant trade real quick because that's something we talked about briefly. Him going to Portland for a first rounder. I mean, look, I think there were people in Detroit who were hoping that they could pry Portland's number 7 pick overall with Jeremy Grant. That's just not the reality of it. And I think that's not to say Jeremy Grant's value, but I think with the contract, I think a lot of people probably overvalued it. Jeremy
hmm
Grant's a really good player because, like, let me be as clear as possible. Great pickup for Portland. Like, he's exactly what they need. That's the type of move you need to make. Somebody that impacts now, helps out Dame Lillard, maybe gets them back into the mix here a little bit. Um, but I do think as a league, they probably overvalued him for Detroit. Again, that's what clears up all this cap space. Like you get a first rounder and you clear up all this space in a vacuum. It may not look like the best value because that was my initial reaction was like, wait, that was it? Like
mine
that's
too.
all we got back for Jeremy Grant. But I think when you look at the overall picture of what Detroit is doing, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I looked at it from a Sixers potential because there were some rumors going around about the Sixers trying to do it, and I was like, wow, that's all it would have taken to potentially get him. But they did receive a second round pick in 2022, the 2025 first round pick. That's from Milwaukee, but is protected 1 through 4. you get the 2025 second round pick that's from Portland, and then you get the 2026 second round pick. You get to pick between Portland or New Orleans spot in that situation. Plus, like you said, the 21 million trade exception. So like it does open up a lot of things. Like you were saying, they can now make a run at another player now, and we can see where it lands them and sets them up for a potential really nice run for the next few years.
Again, all their players are young. They're all on rookie deals, and you have a lot of cap space. That's exactly the place you want to be if you're
Mm-hmm.
Detroit. Could be great in a couple of years. It's still a long way to go, but I definitely think they're onto something for sure. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. You guys are also onto something for sure. Find us anywhere that you can find a podcast, Google Play Store, Apple. It will read a review if you leave it on iTunes, Google Play Store, which I think I already said, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart. Anywhere you find a podcast, you'll find us.
Yep, and like we said, we are on the YouTube, as the kids say. And if you want to check us out there, just go to YouTube, type in Drive and Dish NBA. There's a video version of all of our podcast episodes there, as well as some little clippable type content. Whenever we can find the second to do it.
Thank you for completely removing my "you're hipper than me" when you called it the YouTube. I
the
appreciate the assist there, Just.
the YouTube. I'm just saying, I'm not as hip as you think I am. So
Yeah, we'll put a poll up. I guarantee you'll win.